It's the worst of the CBC for August 5th, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you do not have to. All right, we all know where today's episode's going to be going and what it's going to cover. It is what has been all over the news, even Canadian news. It's the 2 mass shootings in the United States. I didn't make an episode yesterday because I just didn't want to be part of the media circus right after it happened. And I don't like the short format because I think this issue needs a much longer explanation, which is why we'll go over it on the Wednesday night long episode of Uninterrupted. So what is the worst of the CBC today? What do they cover? They covered, of course, mass shooting. There was even shootings in Toronto that got very little coverage. There's some India-Pakistan stuff that it's going to get an honorable mention. But let's just get right into it. What was the worst thing on the CBC today? Now, the worst thing, in my opinion, was, yes, we can talk about sort of the entire thing. The entire thing was just bad. But if I want to highlight one sterling point of just terrible journalism, it is how they covered sort of Donald Trump's response to the shooters. Now, I have been a long-time proponent of not bringing up mental illness when it comes to acts of mass violence or terrorism. People with mental illness are less likely to commit violent crime than the general population, more likely to be the victims. Also, because of the way DSM-V and DSM-5s are written, this will bring up my psychology degree. Anyone who commits a mass atrocity like this, if you psychoanalyze them after the fact, you can almost always find some sort of mental illness with all these attackers. And mental illness is a broad spectrum. It's really not helpful. And Donald Trump did bring up mental illness. And the CBC slammed him for bringing up mental illness or implied that he was stupid. Didn't so much slam him and explain his bad, just implied he was stupid for doing it. Now, again, I don't like left and right when they did this, but let's not forget that the CBC, when the Danforth shooting happened, when there was a shooter and he just started shooting people in Danforth, and he had a weapons cache in his apartment with his parents. He had mysterious trips and receipts to Pakistan. All these extremist videos he was watching. It was just mental illness. Mental illness was the only explanation. That's all we needed. They just said mental illness. You know, the NCCM wrote a propaganda statement saying just a history of mental illness. That's what happened here. The Danforth shooting, pure mental illness, no other factors. Then the police even got out and said recently, yeah, we investigate just mental illness. What about the receipts to Pakistan? What about the weapons cache? No, just mental illness. All right, so a lot of, and they were saying things like, this is the first time Trump has condemned white nationalism. No, it isn't, okay? Let's not be ridiculous here, okay? So that was sort of the worst is, yes, Trump was saying wrong things, but let's not forget there was a left-wing mass shooter this weekend and a right-wing mass shooter, and both the left and the right played the mental illness card. It was disgusting when both people did it, but the CBC only hit back against Trump. So it was just a lot of really bad journalism there. Now, bonus for worst story, because I don't want to talk about this, their coverage of Kashmir, basically Pakistani propaganda. Now, fun fact, so India just revoked the special status of Kashmir, and the CBC is treating this like, oh! Now, good on India for saying F you to a stupid UN resolution, but the CBC was just Pakistani propaganda for 4 minutes, and that was kind of disturbing to watch. Now, for anyone who's wondering why India is mad at us, it's not because Justin Trudeau danced around in silly costumes and made a fool of himself in the country. India's actually really mad at us because Canada is now the home of the Khalistani movement. That is sort of Sikh separatist terrorism. It is actually not supported by the majority of Sikhs in India or even in Canada, but it's propped up heavily by the ISI plants we have within our own government, and that's the Pakistani intelligence service. So it's sort of a disturbing trend in Canada to see the sort of Pakistani propaganda consistently being pushed in our society. So that gets a bonus mention, because I can't just not mention that. We can't just talk about what we have to go back to our number one omission. So when we talk about the biggest omission of the day, I'm gonna say 2 here. So the Dayton shooting. So this was the guy who was an Elizabeth Warren supporter. Now, this isn't Elizabeth Warren's fault, okay? It's not Elizabeth Warren talking about socialism isn't the reason this happened, okay? The primary responsibility is on the shooter and the surrounding ideology, whether that be, radical Marxism, Islamism, white supremacy, okay? These are the factors. It's not mental illness. It's not Elizabeth Warren. It's not Donald Trump, okay? But anyone blaming Donald Trump for a shooter, well, sorry, but that's the ban all Islam argument when a terrorist attack happens, okay? Both are wrong. So they were talking about what was the motive. We don't know the motive yet. That's good. It's good reporting. We don't know the motive yet. But then they start speculating on the motive of, is it white nationalism? 6 of the 9 people killed were not white. And it's like, Guys, he literally says there's a verified Twitter post, Elizabeth Warren supporter, anti-Trump, social justice, pro-Antifa. This was not a racial attack, but even insinuating it, just kind of, it was a lot of leading the witness, so to speak, there. Just assuming that no one would look it up because they're pushing political narratives. And I hate pushing political narratives. This is why I feel uncomfortable doing this video right now, but we have to push through this. Now, the other thing they did in the omission is, I just don't like how they covered this. So they even talked to the founder of 8chan. Now, again, 8chan is a place filled with weird, terrible people. Okay, fine. I've never even been on it, but it's just weird. Now, they talked about, shutting down 8chan and talking about 8chan. Like, okay, so you've seen the thing. And one of the things that was being pushed on these internet forums is sort of beating his number. So the white supremacist shooter in El Paso was pushing it's inspired by Christchurch. Can we beat it? There's a great article on the gamification of terrorism. And they were all sort of pushing this meme like, can we beat the number? Can we beat the number? So they claim to have knowledge of this 8chan board, but it looks like they have no knowledge of what was actually on it. So what I'm disturbed about is the CBC keeps leading with the number and the people. And we know this is the dangerous part of media. Stop pushing the body counts. Stop saying the numbers. Stop publishing their names and the numbers. Okay? This is one of the reasons. I'll put this as reason number 3. Media malpractice, right? The person responsible, the underlying ideology, media malpractice. Those are my top 3 factors in that order. And this was gross media malpractice in the sense that they were reporting on what was on the 8chan boards without reading it and openly playing into their narrative, right? Because I guess they want views, they want whatever. So the CBC just showed no integrity here, no integrity, no compassion, no foresight, no willingness to stop further tragedies. Just push This is one of those times to push how much we hate Trump and to talk about gun control, how quasi-superior we feel to the Americans. It was really disgusting and bad CBC. So you're wondering, what does this get on the Rosemary Barton scale? Out of 10, 11. Today was an 11 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton scale of bias and bad media practice. And God help us if it gets worse, because I don't even think this is the worst they can do, because yesterday was even worse. So 11 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton scale. I will see you all tomorrow after another hour of CBC News.